I never thought I'd be the reason 15 people walked out of their jobs in a single day. I'm not a CEO, not some visionary founder. I was just the person who finally stopped staying quiet when my boss humiliated me in front of the entire department. He fired me on the spot, tried to make an example out of me, and 72 hours later his career was in flames. Before we get to that meeting and the walkout, I need to go back to when work actually felt good, because that's what made everything that happened later so hard to swallow. For 5 years, I was a senior engineer and unofficial team lead at a mid-sized tech company. Nothing glamorous from the outside, but it was the kind of place people quietly stayed at. We hit our targets, launched products on time, and liked each other. No office politics, no screaming matches, no Sunday night dread. My old manager, Mark, wasn't perfect, but he knew how to lead adults. He cared about the work and the people doing it. If a deadline was impossible, he said it out loud instead of burning us out pretending it wasn't. If a bug slipped into production, he stood in front of upper management and took responsibility, then came back to our corner of the office and said, "Okay, let's fix this together." We had trust. That's the part I miss. Trust meant I could push back on bad ideas without worrying I'd be punished. It meant junior devs could admit when they were stuck instead of hiding their mistakes. It meant nobody was clock watching over our shoulders. We just did the work, and the results spoke for themselves. We weren't some flawless startup fantasy. We had late nights, broken deployments, and the occasional messy sprint review. But there was this unspoken agreement. We were on the same side. Management set goals, we figured out how to hit them, and nobody treated us like children. Then, about 5 years in, everything shifted with one email. Mark announced his retirement. No drama, no scandal. He'd put in his time, wanted to move closer to his grandkids, and the company threw him a farewell party with cake and awkward speeches. We were sad, but not panicked. The department was stable. The processes were solid. How bad could a new manager be if the foundation was this strong, right? That's when they hired David. On paper, David looked impressive. Big name companies on his resume. Lots of buzzwords about driving transformation and unlocking value. In reality, he had zero experience in our industry and little interest in listening to people who did. His first day set the tone. He called an all-hands meeting for our 20-person department and walked in like the main character in a movie only he was watching. No small talk, no attempt to learn names, no questions about how the team worked. He just grabbed a marker, stood at the front of the room and said, "I'm here to shake things up. The old ways are done." You could feel the air shift. A couple of people forced a laugh. A few exchanged looks over their laptops. I remember thinking, that's a weird way to talk about the system that's been keeping this place afloat for years. At the time, I told myself it was just a bad first impression. New boss, nervous energy, clumsy attempt to sound confident. I had no idea that sentence was basically a warning label we all chose to ignore. The first week under David should have been enough to tell me this wasn't going to work. He called me into a meeting room and slid a spreadsheet across the table. "I need you to fill this out every day," he said. "Hour by hour. What you worked on, who you talked to, what you delivered." I'd been doing this job for 5 years. "You can see everything in Jira," I said. He smiled. "That's not leadership visibility. I want real accountability." By the end of the week, everyone had some version of the same sheet. Seniors, juniors, even the designer. Then he took over our inboxes. Any message going to a client or stakeholder had to go through him first. Not big proposals. Every email. A simple status update sat in his inbox for 2 days while he reviewed the tone. We missed a small milestone. He still sent a follow-up to the team saying, "Going forward, please be more proactive." In our next all-hands, he put the burn-down chart on the big screen and started calling out names. "Why is this ticket still open?" he snapped at a junior dev. "Are you stupid or just lazy?" The room went quiet. I stepped in. "We're blocked on an API dependency. We flagged it yesterday." He didn't even look at me. "Did I ask you? I'm talking to him." That became the pattern. Public humiliation in meetings, then long emails about raising the bar, and no more excuses. He also started collecting trophies with our work. Months before he arrived, we'd kicked off an automation project that cut deployment time by hours each week. My name was on the original proposal. The team built it, tested it, shipped it. After David joined, he presented it to the executives as an initiative I've been driving to modernize our pipeline. The slide deck still had our project name on it. Our faces were gone. I found out because a VP congratulated him in the hallway while I was standing there. He just smiled and said, "Well, I push my people hard." And he started enforcing culture building over time. Not because there was a real deadline, but because, in his words, if you're serious about your career, you'll stay late. People were logged in until 9 or 10 at night, doing work no one had asked for a month earlier. He killed a project that was performing well because it wasn't innovative enough, then replaced it with a half-baked idea he'd scribbled on a whiteboard. When we pushed back with data, he waved a hand. "You're too close to the problem. You can't see the bigger picture." Morale fell off a cliff. 3 of our most senior people quietly started interviewing elsewhere. Productivity dropped almost 40% in 6 weeks. The numbers were right there in our tools. HR complaints piled up. David either ignored them or called them growing pains. I tried to handle it like an adult. I booked a one-on-one, showed up with charts comparing performance before and after he joined, anonymized feedback from the team, and examples of clients getting frustrated with delays. "We're burning people out," I said. "We're losing velocity, not gaining it. This isn't working." He skimmed the printouts, then actually laughed. "If you can't handle real leadership," he said, "maybe you should find another job." A few weeks later, he proved exactly what that meant. One of our biggest clients, a $500,000 account, had been asking for a roadmap review and clearer communication for weeks. Their emails landed in David's inbox. He kept pushing them down the priority list. When they finally walked away, he called a meeting with the executives, pulled up the account, and pinned it on me. "Protagonist dropped the ball on this relationship," he said. "I've been trying to clean up the mess." I sat there, knowing I had the ticket history and the email timestamps. I could have fought him in that room. Instead, I swallowed it, took the hit, and told myself I was protecting the team. All I really did was teach him one dangerous lesson. He could lie about me, humiliate me, and walk away clean. The breaking point started with a calendar invite. Emergency all hands, mandatory attendance. No agenda, 30 minutes. David as organizer. We filed into the big conference room. Laptops half open, eyes on the door. David stood at the front, relaxed, like he was about to give a motivational speech. He didn't. "As of today," he said, "this department is entering a restructuring phase. We need people who can adapt, who aren't stuck in old habits and emotional attachments to outdated processes." Then he looked straight at me. "Effective immediately. Protagonist is terminated. We need team players, not dinosaurs holding us back." For a second, it felt like he was talking about someone else. Then the room went dead quiet. A chair creaked. Someone sucked in a breath. Nobody moved. 5 years of late nights and taking the blame for his mistakes collapsed into one sentence. David watched me, waiting for me to explode so he could call me emotional and unprofessional. Instead, I took a breath. "Okay," I said. "If that's how you want to do this, fine. But before I go, I want to clarify a few things. For everyone here." "This meeting is over," David snapped. "Security will escort you out." "I'm sure they'll walk me to the elevator," I said. "They can do it after I'm done talking." I turned to the team. "First," I said, "that Q3 automation project David presented to the board? The one that supposedly transformed deployment efficiency under his leadership?" I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and set it on the table. "This is the original proposal," I said. "Dated 6 months before he joined. My name on it. My team attached to it. Same diagrams. Same scope. You remember building it. He didn't drive that project. He inherited it and slapped his name on top. Second, I continued. David told the execs our efficiency improved 30% after he took over. You've all seen that slide. Here are the actual numbers. I dropped 2 printed reports on the table. Before David, I said, tapping the first, our throughput and defect rates looked like this. Last quarter? I tapped the second. We're down 40%. That's not my attitude. That's our own data. David stepped forward. This is a gross misrepresentation. Third, I said, talking over him. Remember when he canceled the security audit because it was a waste of time? A low murmur went through the room. I filed an HR complaint about that, I said. He buried it. I have the email chain and the ticket that mysteriously died. I glanced toward the back. At some point, the HR director had slipped in. And finally, I said, the $500,000 client we lost because I dropped the ball. I met David's eyes. They emailed him directly. They opened tickets. They asked for a roadmap review. For 3 weeks, he ignored them. I have the timestamps and the ticket history. They did not leave because I failed them. They left because he did. The energy in the room shifted. People who'd been staring at their keyboards were looking straight at him now. Someone muttered, I knew it. David's face went red. You don't get to stand here and slander me in front of my team. Security! I stood up, pushed in my chair, and picked up my notebook. I'm leaving, I said. You already made that decision for me. But they deserve to know what's been happening here. They deserve better leadership than this. Better than being used, blamed, and lied to. I looked around at the people I'd stayed late with, fixed bugs with, covered for when things went wrong. You are not the problem, I said. You never were. Then I walked out of that room expecting to leave alone. I was done letting him write the story by himself. Walking out of that conference room felt like stepping off a cliff. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just walked back to my desk, opened the top drawer, and started pulling my life out in quiet, stupid little objects. Mugs from hackathons, a tangle of old lanyards, a photo from our first product launch with everyone crammed into frame, grinning and exhausted. I honestly thought that was it. I'd pack a box, hand in my badge, and become one more cautionary tale people whispered about in the break room. I was shoving my notebook into my backpack when I heard a chair scrape back behind me. Wait, a voice said. If he's out, I'm done too. I turned. It was Sarah, our senior developer. 7 years at the company. The person everyone went to when they didn't know how something worked under the hood. She wasn't yelling. She just stood up, picked up her laptop, and said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear, I quit. I'm not staying under someone who treats people like this. David had followed me out of the conference room with HR trailing behind him, trying to contain the damage. He spun toward her. Sarah, sit down, he snapped. Nobody asked for your commentary. Mike, our project manager, stood up next. You can't run this department without the people who built it, he said, unhooking his ID badge. I'm out too. It was like a fuse caught. Our QA lead pushed back from her desk. I'm done. 2 junior devs exchanged a look, then stood up together. We're leaving. The designer grabbed her headphones, dropped them into her bag. Yeah, count me out. Our DevOps engineer leaned back in his chair, watching David flail, then shrugged. I already have another offer. This just made my decision easier. One by one, people stood, some shaking, some furious, some oddly calm, like this had been sitting in their chest for weeks just waiting for a match. I just stared. I didn't ask you to do this, I said quietly. Sarah glanced at me. You didn't have to. David completely lost the polished corporate tone he'd practiced for months. You can't all quit, he shouted. That's not how this works. You have contracts. You signed non-competes. I will sue every single one of you if you walk out. Sarah walked right past him toward HR's desk. Our contracts have 2-week notice clauses, she said. And we've all got unused vacation days. We can file our resignations today and be effectively gone as of right now. If legal has a problem, they know where to find us. Someone actually clapped. Nervous, disbelieving, but real. That's when upper management started arriving. Faces from floors we never saw, unless something was very wrong. The director. Then the senior VP. The HR director, who had slipped into the earlier all hands, was now fully watching David come apart. "They're colluding," David said, pointing at me like a child tattling in class. "This is coordinated. Protagonist has been poisoning them against me for months. This is a hostile act." I didn't even have to defend myself. Mike raised his hand. "No one here needed help deciding they were done being screamed at and blamed for your decisions." The room was chaos in slow motion. People printing resignation letters, packing up their desks, quietly hugging each other. 15 out of 20 people, either handing in notice or saying they'd do it by end of day. The HR director finally stepped forward. "David," she said very calmly, "we're going to need you to come with us." He recoiled. "You're taking their side?" "We're following procedure," she replied. "And we've received multiple formal complaints over the last few weeks. This situation changes the timeline." Then she turned to me. "Can you step into the small conference room for a minute?" she asked. "Senior leadership would like to speak with you privately." For the first time all day, my stomach dropped for a different reason. Not fear of being punished, but the weird, disorienting feeling that maybe I wasn't the one on trial anymore. In the conference room, the senior VP sat across from me. No theatrics, no fake empathy. "We've been investigating David for 3 weeks, he said. "Your complaints, other complaints, performance issues, client feedback. What happened out there just accelerated things." I sat back, still holding my half-packed box on my lap. "So, what now?" I asked. He folded his hands. "Now," he said, "we talk about what you want. Because whatever happens to him, this department doesn't exist without people like you. And today made that very obvious." The next 72 hours felt less like a work week and more like watching a slow-motion building collapse. By Monday afternoon, the department was a ghost town with lights on. 15 out of 20 people had either handed in their notice or put in for all of their remaining vacation time. The 5 who stayed were either brand new, tied up in visas, or clinging to the idea that maybe things would magically stabilize. They didn't. 3 major projects missed their delivery dates in the same week. 2 of them had penalty clauses baked into the contracts. Finance calculated roughly $2 million in losses before anyone could spin it as a minor setback. Clients started asking questions. "Where's Mike? Where's Sarah? Where's your DevOps guy?" When they heard those people had either quit or been shoved out, a couple of them quietly asked for meetings with other companies. One of them waited until their renewal date came up and didn't renew. On Wednesday morning, David didn't stride through the office at 8:30 like he usually did. Security walked him out the side entrance before most people were at their desks. No goodbye email, no farewell meeting, just a cleared calendar and a suddenly empty office. By lunchtime, a company-wide email went out. A lot of words about leadership changes and management oversight. A line about reaffirming our commitment to a healthy work environment. No names, no details. But everyone knew exactly who it was about. Then came the part I wasn't expecting. They invited me back in. Not to drag me into another interrogation. Not to threaten me with legal language. To make an offer. We sat in a different conference room this time. No David. Just the CEO, the senior VP, HR, and me. "We want to fix this," the CEO said. "We can't lose the rest of the team. We're prepared to do whatever it takes." On paper, it looked incredible. They offered 30% raises across the board for anyone who would come back. They offered me David's job, along with a public apology and full authority to rebuild the department the right way. They offered budget, headcount, and a chance to shape the culture going forward. A few years earlier, I might have said yes before he finished the sentence. Instead, I asked for a day to think about it. I went home, called the people who'd walked out with me, and listened. Half of them had already accepted new jobs, better jobs, higher pay, remote options, actual support. The other half were excited. Scared, but excited. We'd been joking for months about how we could run circles around half the consulting firms the company brought in. One of the guys had already registered a business name just in case. That just in case suddenly looked very real. The next morning I went back. "I appreciate the offer," I told the CEO, "and the apology, but most of us are already gone. Not just on paper, mentally. Half the team has accepted better roles. The other half, we're starting a consulting firm together." He leaned back, stunned. "There must be something we can do to keep you." "There is," I said. "You can learn from this and treat the next team better than you treated us. But we're done working for people who only see our value when we're walking out the door." 6 months later, here's how it shook out. Our little consulting firm, 8 people from that original team. We work out of a shared space in our living rooms. No forced overtime, no screaming meetings. We pick the clients. We set the terms. 2 of our biggest clients used to be their clients. They didn't follow the logo. They followed the people doing the actual work. The old company eventually rebuilt the department on paper, but it never really recovered. They went through 3 managers in 6 months. Word gets around. Good engineers talk. It's hard to recruit top talent into a department known for burning people out and blaming them on the way out. As for David, last I checked, his LinkedIn headline said, "Between opportunities." A fancy way of saying unemployed. I'm not going to pretend any of this was easy. Quitting isn't a magic button. There were months of uncertainty, spreadsheets, anxiety, and late night. Did we just ruin our lives? Conversations. But here's what I learned. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't a speech. It's a boundary. Sometimes it's walking away from a place that's already decided you're disposable. And sometimes, when you finally stand up, you find out you're not standing alone. The best revenge isn't screaming at a bad boss or watching them get walked out by security. The best revenge is building something better without them, and knowing they get to sit with the knowledge that you never needed them as much as they thought you did.